After 10 years in a cage, the key to my front door was supposed to unlock my freedom. Instead, it opened the most devastating deception of my life. The key felt foreign in my hand. 10 years. For 10 years, the only keys I'd held were metaphorical, the keys to staying sane, to holding on to hope, to remembering the face of the woman I loved. But this was real, cold, solid brass. The key to my front door, our front door. The train ride had been a blur of green fields and blue skies, colors so vibrant they hurt my eyes after a decade of concrete and gray. Every mile that clicked by on the tracks was a mile closer to Sarah, my Sarah. For 3,652 days, her letters were the only thing that kept me breathing. They were my armor against the despair, my proof that a world still existed outside those walls. A world where I wasn't just inmate 734, but Mark, a husband, her husband. "I'll be right here when you get out," she wrote in her last letter, the paper worn soft from my constant rereading. "The house is the same, the town is the same, and my heart is the same, Mark. It's yours. It's always been yours." I'd been framed. A stupid bar fight. A wrong place, wrong time scenario that escalated into a nightmare. A man died, and someone had to pay. They picked me. The evidence was flimsy, the public defender was overworked, and just like that, a decade of my life was stolen. But the injustice of it all faded into the background noise of my single-minded focus. Get through this. Get back to Sarah. Now, I was here, standing on the familiar cracked pavement of our walkway. The oak tree we'd planted as a sapling was now a giant, its branches stretching protectively over the roof. The paint on the porch swing was peeling in the exact same spot I'd always meant to fix. It was all so painfully, beautifully the same. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat of fear and excitement. What if I'd changed too much? What if she looked at me and saw a stranger, a ghost wearing her husband's face? I took a deep, shaky breath, the scent of freshly cut grass and my neighbor's roses filling my lungs. It was the smell of home. I pushed the key into the lock. It resisted for a second, then turned with a satisfying, heavy clunk. The sound echoed in the quiet street, a final pronouncement. I was free. I was home. I pushed the door open slowly, a ridiculous, hopeful grin plastered on my face. I wanted to surprise her. I imagined her in the kitchen, humming to the radio while she cooked, maybe looking out the window. I'd just stand there for a moment, letting her see me, letting the reality sink in. Then I'd say her name, and she'd run into my arms, and the last 10 years would melt away like a bad dream. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My smile faltered slightly. The air inside was different, not stale, but lived in. There was a faint, unfamiliar scent mixed with Sarah's usual lavender something musky, like a man's cologne. A cold knot began to form in my stomach, but I pushed it down. A relative, maybe. Her brother, probably, helping out. I set my worn duffel bag down by the door as silently as I could. The floorboards didn't creak. Sarah always hated that, said she could never sneak up on me. I crept through the foyer, past the photos on the wall. There we were, on our wedding day, young and impossibly happy. There was another photo next to it, a newer one of Sarah at the beach, smiling into the sun. She was still so beautiful it made my chest ache. Then I heard it, a soft murmur of voices from the living room. My heart leapt. It was her. It was Sarah's voice. But then, a moment later, a deeper voice answered, followed by her laughter. It wasn't the polite, reserved laugh she used with strangers. It was a full, throaty laugh, the one she saved for moments of pure, uninhibited joy. The one I hadn't heard in a decade. The cold knot in my stomach tightened into a block of ice. I moved towards the living room doorway, my feet feeling like lead. My whole body was screaming at me to turn around, to run, to go back to the gray world I knew, because whatever was in that room was going to break me. But I couldn't stop. I had to see. I peered around the edge of the doorframe, and the world tilted on its axis. Sarah was on the sofa, curled up. Her head was resting on the shoulder of a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, with dark hair, and his arm was draped casually, possessively, around her. They weren't just talking, they were existing in that comfortable, easy silence that only comes with years of intimacy. My years. The years that were stolen from me. They looked like a painting. A perfect, happy family portrait. And I was the ghost looking in through the window. My bag, which I hadn't realized I'd picked back up, slipped from my numb fingers and hit the hardwood floor with a soft thud. Neither of them heard it. But someone else did. From the corner of the room, a little girl, no older than 5 or 6, looked up from her coloring book. She had Sarah's bright blue eyes and a spray of freckles across her nose. She looked at me, then at the man on the sofa, a small, curious frown on her face. Then she scrambled to her feet, ran towards the couch, and threw her arms around the man's leg. She looked up at him with pure adoration, and said the 2 words that vaporized the last 10 years of hope in a single, devastating blow. "Daddy," she said, her voice clear as a bell. "I'm thirsty." The man, this stranger in my house, with his arm around my wife, scooped the little girl up and settled. The man, this stranger in my house, with his arm around my wife, scooped the little girl up and settled her on his lap. "Thirsty, sweetie? Okay, Daddy will get you some juice in a minute." The man, this stranger in my house, with his arm around my wife, scooped the little girl up and settled her on his lap. "Thirsty, sweetie? Okay, Daddy will get you some juice in a minute." Daddy. The word was a physical blow. It struck the air from my lungs, buckled my knees. My hand, still holding the worn letters, tightened into a fist, crinkling the paper that had been my gospel for a decade. The man looked up then, his smile fading as he finally saw me standing in the doorway, a ghost at the feast. His eyes widened, first in confusion, then in a dawning horror that mirrored my own. And I recognized him. Under the 10 years of added age, under the comfortable domesticity, it was a face I knew as well as my own. A face I had seen in my dreams, in old photographs, a face I had mourned with every fiber of my being. "David," I whispered, the name a shard of glass in my throat. My brother. My younger brother, David. The same David who, according to a sobbing Sarah on a prison phone 8 years ago, had wrapped his car around an oak tree on a rain-slicked road. The same David whose funeral I couldn't attend, whose grave I'd sworn to visit the second I was free. Sarah scrambled off the couch, her face a mask of pure, abject terror. "Mark! Oh God, Mark!" David gently set Lily on the floor. "Lily, sweetie, why don't you go play in your room for a little while? Mommy and Daddy need to talk to your uncle." Lily's blue eyes, Sarah's eyes, flicked between us. "Uncle Mark? From the pictures?" My world spun. So I wasn't erased completely. I was a story, a faded photograph on the mantelpiece, the long-lost uncle. "Yes, honey, go on now," Sarah urged, her voice trembling so badly it was barely a whisper. Lily, sensing the suffocating tension, scurried out of the room without another word. The second she was gone, the silence that fell was heavier than any prison wall. It was the crushing weight of a decade-long lie. "You're dead," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. It was the only thing my brain could process. "You died. Sarah told me you died." David couldn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor, at the intricate patterns on the rug we had picked out together. "Mark, he started, his voice cracking. "Don't," I cut him off, my voice rising with a dangerous tremor. I took a step into the room, my living room, and held up the crumpled letters. "Don't you dare say a word. I want to hear it from her." I turned my gaze on Sarah, and for the first time she flinched away from me. "Tell me, Sarah, tell me about my brother's funeral. Was it a nice service? Did you cry for him?" Tears streamed down her face, silent and useless. "Mark, please, you have to understand." "Understand what?" I roared, the sound ripping from my chest, raw and feral. "That my wife and my brother, my dead brother, have been playing house while I rotted in a cell? That you wrote me these letters?" I shook the packet, the brittle paper rattling like dry bones. "You wrote me about how much you missed me, how you were counting the seconds, while you were sleeping next to him. Did he read them over your shoulder? Did you two have a good laugh?" "It wasn't like that," David finally shouted, finding his voice. "It was never like that." Then what was it like, Davy? I spat his childhood nickname like poison. Enlighten me. When, exactly, did you rise from the grave? The story came out in ugly, broken pieces. It wasn't a car crash. David had gotten in deep with the wrong people loan sharks, criminals who didn't care that his brother was in prison. The threats started first against him, then against Sarah. He saw a way out, a staged accident, a faked death certificate bought from a corrupt official. He could disappear, and the debt would disappear with him. I was going to leave, David choked out. Just vanish. But Sarah, she was alone. You were gone. I was all she had left, and she was all I had. So he stayed, hiding in the shadows of my life, a ghost in my home. And somewhere in their shared fear and grief for a life that was, for a brother who was lost to them in a different way, they found comfort in each other. One desperate night turned into another. A secret comfort became a secret relationship. And then came Lily, a secret made real. So you let me mourn him, I said, the words cold and dead in the air. You let me cry myself to sleep in a 6x9 cell, thinking my only brother was gone forever. For what? So you could have this. My house. My wife. I loved you, Mark, Sarah sobbed, her words a desperate, pathetic plea. I did. I do. But I was so scared, and so lonely. And David was here. I was always here, I said, my voice dropping to a hollow whisper. I was right here, in these letters, every single day, waiting for you. I looked at them. The perfect little family. The life I'd held on to like a prayer. It was all a mirage. A cruel, elaborate lie built on the foundations of my stolen years. My heart, which had shattered when I first saw them, was now just dust. There was nothing left to break. I turned without another word and walked back to the foyer. I picked up my duffel bag. It felt heavier now, weighted down with the ghosts of a life that never was. "Mark, where are you going?" Sarah cried, following me. "Don't go. We can talk about this. We can fix this." I stopped at the front door and turned to face her one last time. I looked past her, at my brother, standing pale and broken in the living room he had stolen. I looked at the staircase Lily had run up. An innocent child born from the most profound betrayal I could ever imagine. There was nothing to fix. You can't fix something that was never real. I spent 10 years in a cage, dreaming of coming home, I said, my voice steady for the first time. But this isn't my home. It never was. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the cold brass key, and set it down on the small table by the door. The sound it made was small, but final. A full stop at the end of a tragic story. Then I opened the door and walked out into the afternoon sun. I didn't look back. I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't have a single thing to my name except a worn-out bag and the clothes on my back. But for the first time in 10 years, I felt truly free. Because the prison I'd just left was far worse than the one I'd been released from.